1.
Now, welcome to part 2 with Billy. Enjoy.
Yeah. So interesting enough, I have to ask, and I know we had a prior discussion. So if there's any way you can do it with maintaining credibility, of course, but I'm just looking for at least 2 stories as we transition. I think we've been having a conversation for an hour, so this is sort of moving into the second half of this. Really like looking at the behind the scenes stories that you experience, not like the most wild and crazy that tomorrow I don't know where you're at because you're thrown in jail, but like any kind of like story that you can say behind the scenes that would show interest, right? Because I do want to transition into lessons learned after that. So even if this story has representation to that, but yeah, if you could just give like 1 or 2 stories, because that's again, right, this is what we see, right, from my side as a normal consumer of music, and at I would say the tier 1 level, not the tier 4 or 5 or 7, is just watching on TV, watching on Facebook, listening to albums. That's as far as the extent that I have. So do you have any sort of funny, quirky, like behind the scenes stories without naming names that you can provide?
Oh, well, let's see. Tell me what kind of rating are you looking for? Yeah, I got. Let me keep it light since this is a family program. There is one excellent behind the scenes. So this goes back to Australia, with James McKenna.
Which we didn't mention yet, by the way. So do you want to do a little lead
Oh,
up
sure.
into that?
So,
Yeah, that's important.
interestingly enough, I had this artist, and he's one of my closest friends now. But I had this artist when I first came out to LA. So I'll give you the quick rundown.
Sure.
Um, meet on Craigslist, and he's looking for me he's looking for a guitar player to play in his band. And so I drive down to meet him at his band rehearsal, and he's basically got this bass player who looks like, he's like on steroids, like just veins popping out. And anyways, long story short, I said, he comes out to the car after, and he says, "Hey, so what do you think?" And I said, "I like you, but and I'll play in your band, but you gotta get rid of the other 2 guys."
It's me or him, me or him, me or him. Yeah.
And so he goes, "Oh, okay." And then a week later, he goes, "I got rid of that guy." I said, "What?" I said, "That guy's gonna find me and beat me up." So James, I worked with James for many years, and one of the reasons, when I had some of my own, I had a lot of my own personal struggles, dealing with, drugs and alcohol and things like that, as probably most people in the entertainment industry go. And I remember James would always, because he had to drive like an hour and a half or an hour and a half to get to me every day. And, he would be showing up at my place to do a session, and I'd be passed out. And he'd be knocking on my door, and I didn't want to answer it. And he had so much patience with me. And that's why I really wanted to stick with him in the long haul. So all of a sudden, James, gets a call, and it turns out it's from this guy who wants to use one of our songs, for Australian rules football. And of course, I never heard of it back then. And this must have been like 2000, and I think this is 2007 or 2008 maybe. And I guess this guy, his name was Dennis Cometti, and he was kind of like the John Madden equivalent in Australia.
Oh, gotcha.
Big time football announcer with all the sort of the one liners and all that stuff, and a former legend in the sport as well. Aussie rules football, and um, and he said he found our CD in like the bargain bin at CD Baby or something. He really liked the song, and he wanted us to come out there. And so we said, "Yeah, we'll come out there." And he says, "Yeah, I'll book you the shows. I'll take care of everything. So bring merchandise." So we got all this merchandise made. And the first thing that we do, we get to the airport, and the customs in Australia, they said, "You didn't fill out the proper forms." And hey, man, we didn't, they were going to seize all and destroy all our stuff, all our merchandise. They're like, "You trying to make money here, mate, and you didn't want to fill out the forms and blah, blah." And we don't know what's going on. We were just told to come out here by this guy, this football guy. And what's his name? Dennis Cometti. You guys know Dennis Cometti? Yeah, he's the guy that's sponsoring the whole thing. Oh, we're real sorry, mate. Here,
The doors just open. They just open
I
wide.
mean, and you're talking about customs, right? Coming into a foreign country. So it wasn't even like, okay, we're going to verify this. It was like, I mean, as soon as he said the name and showed them the email, that was good enough for them.
Wow.
So while we were there, so this, like I said, this is going to be a nice G-rated story, and this is kind of a nice G-rated story about James, the McKenna experience going through Australia. But so we get out there, and we're all of a sudden we're playing it there, like we're attending their Super Bowl, we're performing like at this concert outside their Super Bowl, I mean, bigger than any gig we had done here in the States, and we're getting paid a lot of money, well, a lot of money to us back then.
Yeah.
So while we're out there, we're like, man, this is like just freaking amazing. And so Dennis is visiting us he got us not a hotel room, he got us like one of those live-in apartments for.
Wow.
So while he was out there, we write this song called "Last One Standing." If you look up "Last One Standing" McKenna, you'll hear the song on YouTube. So we write the song, and I decided to have Dennis, because he's known for his football one-liners, to tell me some like terminology with the sport. So we wrote this song and worked it into the terminology, and I made it real anthemic, like a U2 type song. And Dennis heard it and said, I want this to be the official song for the sport, and I want you guys back here next year, and we're going to promote it. And so we come back out the following year, and we're out there for a long period of time. We're out playing the song and playing concerts like once, 2, 3 times a week. And we hired some local couple out there from a band called the Wellingtons to back us up. And I mean, we were out there, and then it became we were on all the radio stations and the hype, and this was going to be the song that was going to replace their anthem called "Up There Kazali," which was like a up da 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 da, like one of those. And Dennis saw it as a song that could really open up the sport to the world. And that year, by the way, they also showed the Aussie Rules Grand Final, which is their Super Bowl, on ESPN2. So this was all tying in together.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it became a thing. Wait, these 2 American blokes are writing the song for our sport.
Oh no.
And it became a thing in the press and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. So, and I remember out there in Australia, and they, and one, they call them bogans, right? Like drunkards or whatnot, after the bar. And they said to me, what do you, they're using some derogatory language based off my half Asianness.
Mm-mm.
They asked me if I was Chinese or something. I said no. I said no, bro. I'm not Chinese. I'm American. They're like, let's get him. It was like, I would have been better off. Like the fact that being American out there was even worse, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so then I said no. I said, I'm the American guy that wrote the song "Last One Standing" that we're gonna be before. You're the guy. Let's get him.
You're just digging your hole deeper. That's.
Well, I thought I was going to be able to use it like a celebrity thing, like get out of jail free card. It was actually worse. So we're going to go to play the grand final of the Super Bowl, and it's big. We're performing the parade beforehand, doing all this press, and we were supposed to perform at the very end of the game when they do their victory lap. And the stadium, I think, held like 100 to 150,000 people.
Wow.
I know it's kind of a wide range, but I know it was more than 100,000, less than 150.
Yeah.
And then they had In Excess was performing the halftime show. And so we're getting ready, and it's a tie ball game with like a tie match with like 3 minutes left. So we're backstage on the thing, getting ready to go out there. And I'm like watching the game on TV, and it's counting down. And they said, "Oh my God, this is, it's coming to the end of the match. It's over. Oh my God." I'm like, "Well, so what, is there an overtime?" "There's no overtime." "Well, what does that mean?" "It means it ends in a tie." "So what does that mean?" The stage manager goes to me, he goes, "It means you blokes aren't playing."
Oh,
So,
no.
so we're out there after this whole like 2-year buildup.
Oh no.
Perform at their Super Bowl, and then it ends in a tie, and they tell us we're not performing. Of course, they said it, and they said it had only happened like the last time something like that happened was like 1972. So this is like only the second or third time that this ever happened in the
Oh,
history of the sport. So I remember James, was and the other bandmates were really upset about it, and was my chance, going back to the initial story of James's patience with me. This was my chance to go back and calm him down and say it was going to be all right. And once the dust settled, they said, "Well, we're just going to replay the match next week." So, I mean, can you imagine if our Super Bowl ended in a tie and then they would do the whole thing over again a week
oh
later?
man.
So, and then that's how it ended. We ended up getting to perform. We got to perform the next week, so we had to stay out there for an extra week and all that. But imagine like such an emotional climax,
Oh yeah.
and
What an adrenaline dump. I mean, just I
it was,
mean,
it was I mean, it was. I guess in those types of situations, that was always my strength. Like I'm usually I have a screw loose um, most of the time, but when the when the poop hits the fan, I'm usually the guy that everybody calls to come in and take care of stuff. So
nice.
so that's yeah, that was a crazy story. I'm trying to think of another good crazy story that's on the G-rated stuff. See, a lot of the crazy stuff, yeah, and I understand what you're trying to do with Pave and everything, so I want to, I
I
don't know.
understand it. So, right, it's by episode, right? So people, there's going to be an understanding of like, hey, we have this person having a discussion. Like, I'm going to eventually have people that have had military experience on. I guarantee you that those stories are going to be wild and crazy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, again, if you don't have one, that's okay. But if you can think of one just real quick, um, maybe another one, again, right? Not naming names, you can to protect the innocent, if you will, or guilty in this case. I don't know, but yeah, if you could just give us one more story, man, really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
well, I'll tell this story, and this is yeah, I wouldn't say this is funny. In fact, this is kind of kind of alluding to what I was saying about why I don't like the industry. But um, one of the things that was just very prevalent, um, was the amount of sort of the abuse, right? Like the high pressure to do drugs, alcohol, and then also, taking advantage of like a lot of young artists. And it goes both ways. Trust me. Like, I mean, these producers, it's not just young girls. I mean, this is Hollywood. So if you're a young guy trying to make it too, there's all sorts of, bad stuff going on. But um, the amazing thing was that after the Me Too movement kind of hit, um, you thought that things, they fired few people, and I watched these people get fired, but then I just watched them get rehired at another company, and it was like nothing happened, doing the same stuff. Um, that's uh, that's a kind of a sad part of it. I guess that's pretty crazy. You know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it transitions into, like I said earlier, what I'd like to talk about is really as you've staged up, let's say there's four different stages, right? Can you just provide some lessons learned, some caveats, if you will, going, okay, from the college here, lessons learned, and from like the music here into producing, some lessons learned, and production into a manager, and now like where you're at. And then after that, I do want to discuss a little bit about the software and marketing and just get into a little bit more detail,
Okay.
time allowing. But yeah, would you mind just telling us a couple of areas of lessons learned that are really
Yeah.
striking in retrospect?
Well, what I can tell you is, and I don't even have to necessarily go into specifics, more though in a general sense. I would say that one of the things that I learned is that don't burn any bridges, right? Because when you're dealing with a lot of artists and a lot of emotional people like you have here, in the entertainment business, um, when something doesn't go your way or the way you expected it to, it's real easy to kind of torch that person or that entity. That's why I'm kind of hesitant to use actual names or you know, I, I don't want to. There's certain people that I definitely will never work with, um, but you got to be careful not to burn that bridge. And I'm sure this is more than just the music industry, but that person, you may come back, 2 years later, and that person may be at the top of a company, or
Yeah.
that person may be your boss, or something like
Yep.
that. So you don't want to burn bridges. Um, and then I would say that the other thing is that um, I guess everybody's situation is different. But looking back, I wish I wish I wasn't so focused on trying to make money. Um, Although I guess if you're going to do anything as a profession or to try to make a living, you have to make money. So you can't do everything pro bono or charity. But there were a lot of opportunities and a lot of gigs that I had where I left certain gigs um, because I had an opportunity to make more money elsewhere. And had I stuck it out with some of those situations, which I think were quality situations, um, then I probably could have tasted a little bit more success, or at least felt better about things. Ultimately, when I jumped ship for more money in other situations, it was very short-lived, and at the end of the day, it wasn't very gratifying. Um, and I guess that's why they called me a hired gun, or a mercenary in the business, because um, people knew that if they hired me, they had to pay me, but there was probably not a lot of chance of loyalty, or sticking it out in the long term during bad times. And I regret that to a degree. I wish I had stuck with some stuff more. Um, the other thing that I would say is, uh, which I'm trying to do now, I think it's important that as you go along in your career at different points, it's important to mentor somebody at different stages of the game. So when I was a manager, um, I was too worried that other people were going to try to steal or influence my artists. So um, looking back, I wish I would have maybe found like a younger, aspiring manager to kind of help, to kind of mentor, um, because it does two things. One, it makes you uh, a little less selfish about things, but it also helps reinforce your skill set. When you're sort of teaching or mentoring, you're constantly reinforcing your own skill set and giving validation of what you do, but also inspiring the next generation. And that's why I think one of the reasons that I enjoy teaching privately so much is because I feel like I'm passing something along, that's positive and productive. So, and it's just a good feeling to give in that regard. Another lesson that I learned. Well, I learned some of the things that I would say that have validated what I do is to be well organized. Um, is to not get caught up in the social pressures. Even still today, it's very difficult not to. Sometimes you want to stay in the loop, and you feel like, okay, if I don't do this, then I'm gonna miss out on an opportunity, or I'm gonna fall out of the scene or whatever. But then um, then you end up doing these things, and then you get stuck into the social pressures of drugs, alcohol, debauchery, and large, and all that stuff. So
Right.
I would
Right.
just say, uh, yeah, I mean,
So you said in, I think it was 2015, if I'm not mistaken, is that when you started dabbling in software? Is that correct?
well,
2015
I
area?
wouldn't say that I dabbled in software, so to speak. At that point, I decided to make a career change, and because I wanted to do something that was not music related, and I was trying to do something that seemed like it was on the foref, technology, right?
Right.
Software. And so uh, that's when I went to my soft. We had a software company making, uh, essentially relational databases, like scheduling software, like CRMs, that type of stuff. And we made it for companies that were in the music and film and TV
So
industry.
just
And
for those folks that don't know what CRM is, can you say that abbreviation?
yeah, like customer relations software, or like
Yeah.
client management. Like
Right.
anything basically contact management and things like that. Um, but yeah, so I to me, actually, right before I got with that company, um, I didn't know how I was going to get a real job when when my only experience in life, in the last 20 years had been in music. Previously, I worked at retail, like when I was in high school, and I worked for the vitamin store, GNC or whatever. I worked there for many years, and um, you know,
Protein. Protein, baby. Protein.
yeah, exactly, whey protein and creatine. Um, but actually, I uh, didn't know my musical background would translate into real world activities, so I went to this employment agency, like a headhunter, and they were able to take all my musical experience and translate it into real world skills, I guess. So they said, "Oh, a music producer, you're a good project manager, and this and that and the other thing." So then they shopped it around, and I started getting contacted by a lot of companies, you know, based on my retail sales experience and all that, and management and stuff like that in this past. Um, I just started going for sales director positions, and uh, although I'd never been a sales director, so, but I just wanted the income that came with being
You
a
stayed
sales
at
director.
Holiday Inn last night. It's okay.
Holiday Inn Express, that's right. Um, so, and then, I told you earlier on about how I also wanted the marketing director job. And so, yeah, essentially for me, looking at everything in this position um, was just like looking at another project or musical project and how to get it out there to the masses. And, um, sales was kind of easy for me because it was just a numbers game, right? You just
Right.
need to make money, and you need to have increase your profit margins and all the sort of the typical stuff. Um, and anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the sales and marketing, so that's a pretty hard pivot. So it's interesting, and that's a good thing to know, right? And again, like going back to our earlier conversation, I bet if somebody were to try, you could use the same thing with Chat GBT now, because I've had some folks that I've talked to recently that have actually had their resume written by Chat GBT. They put in some variables or whatever and say, spit me out in this format. So you could probably use that, regarding, and rather than a headhunter company or something, as you mentioned earlier. So like I said, I just think that's very interesting to go from the music industry into that. But there's a lot of like even hard and, as you mentioned, soft skill sets that can traverse,
Well,
if you will.
right. I mean, I think, which again, looking back, is why I made that decision when I was in college to switch into business. And in fact, one of the things I teach a lot of my private students, some of them, I have right now about 6 of them that are ready to go into college. And of course, the question is, oh, which music college or which this or which liberal arts school? And I said, don't waste your money. I said, if you just want to be a musician, save that $250,000 that you would spend on music college and set up your own music business. I mean, your own music company, or live off it, or do whatever you want, but don't waste it on college. And okay, well, the parents are like, yeah, but I still want them to go to college. Okay, go to a college and get a business degree, or get a degree that can be used. I mean, the thing about a business degree is, and what I learned is that whether it's music, software, or chemical additives, um, it's the same principles, right? A musical artist or a band or a recording is the same thing as software, is the same thing as chemical additive, is the same thing as coconut water, cell phones, or anything. So all the principles of business work in either of those scenarios. So to me, it really wasn't that hard of a pivot. Um, I think what the hardest part of the pivot was believing in myself that you know that I could do that, right? That I could look at that. I mean, theoretically, I knew what I was doing and it made sense. But
Yeah, because I think I don't know if you ever read it. There's a good book called Presence, and there's also some YouTube videos by Dr. Amy Cuddy, and she talks about not only faking it till you make it, but faking until you become it, right? And so that's that next level. Is you're not going in, but hopefully people have the privilege of having the office where they can shut the blinds and do the YouTube University as you did, just to fill in the gaps. Say, hey, listen, I'm not gonna lie, right? Even and stuff I do every day, there's some learning. I think there's always learning. If you want to stay relevant in your respective industry, there's always additional learning, whether that's through audiobooks, formal or informal class settings. Or there's a really good thing called Course RA, if you haven't seen that. And some major universities put out free courses, and whether that's coding or marketing and some other stuff, and you can sign up for it and attend it. We're talking like Syracuse and some other high level colleges. So there's a lot of stuff that's beneficial out there. And it's funny that you say that, because a lot of folks will come in and say, hey, what should I do with X, Y, and Z? And it's really like per person and per aptitude and capability. And there is the overarching thing. So do you go specific on your bachelor's and then do an MBA, right? Because you have that technical skill set, and then you want that overarching business plan in your brain. That way you don't hit a ceiling in your business. That way you don't become a technical pipeline, right? Which a lot of folks have experienced is I can be the technical SME or proficient at that, but when it gets into the blurring line, if you will, of that gap into the managerial role, and then it's holistic, is how do we tie into the other parts of this business, right? Like you used CRM before, which I've written some papers on. But it's interesting, like the automotive industry utilizes that, the supply chain industry utilizes that, so they can reach on the left and right side, not only CRM, but there's other software that's been created to do that too, looking at raw material to manufacturing, so they can mitigate the bullwhip effect and some other things that occur in the supply chain. So it's very interesting and how important that is to have that holistic sense and go, hey, is there something I can do to enhance my technical skill set, but then also my business savvy, or like you even mentioned, marketing, which is also one of those things
Well,
too.
going back to your chat GPT, I mean, that's where I think whether you're going to see the real changes in automation, right? You're going to start seeing, like you said, supply chains, things like that. That's where I think the AI technologies are really going to improve things, and more than likely at the expense of a lot of jobs. One of the things that I would say is, the higher education, and that's all well and good, but there's also plenty of people that run businesses, and I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that um, that have like business degrees and MBAs and all this stuff, and then they can't start their own business, so you can't get business off the ground. And I know plenty of people who run successful businesses that have no college education.
Okay, so yeah, we're just wrapping up about the software and marketing and utilizing free services and the soft skills and hard skills, and how it's better to benefit looking at potential, looking at business as a formal degree or something, to assist people out, as you said earlier. So I know that you said you have a couple of businesses now that you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about what those are?
Yeah. So, again, like I started during the pandemic, a music. Um, I started out like I guess a music lessons business, but not in the traditional sense where it's, I mean, yeah, sure, I can show people how to play the guitar better or do vocal lessons, but a lot of my sort of marketing pitch was being able to take your musical idea in your head and being able to flesh it out, write it, produce it, market it, take care of your legal matters, and then have it up online for the whole world to download or buy or whatnot. So um, that's one of them. My lessons business. It's onebillsmusiclessons.com. The number one billsmusiclessons.com. And then the other one, a company that I'm in called Pipe Dream Industries. And so Pipe Dream is utilizing things like carbon nanotechnology and carbon nanotubes, um, to basically as an additive or as coatings, um, to reduce the amount of plastic, um, to um, help with safety, like in building materials and things like that. So we have, one of our main products is this uh, heat resistant coating, or I guess fire resistant coating, and you could apply it on drywall. You could mix it in with cement and things like that, and it will the fire resistant coating will withstand heat up to 3,000 degrees.
Well,
So that can prevent things like buildings from burning down and whatnot. Yeah, our other products can be used to reduce the amount of plastic while maintaining the same strength of plastic. Um, all very boring scientific stuff, but definitely on the cutting
love
edge
it.
of things that are going to be used tomorrow. And so, yeah, that's a couple of
That's
things.
cool.
And
Maybe
in addition
we'll
to
have a
that,
separate discussion and dive into the pipe dreams thing. That sounds pretty interesting for the science part of my brain, right? So there's a musicality and science part.
yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, even with this new company, when I got asked to come in, part of it was, um, a new startup that was trying to essentially change the future and change how things are done. And again, I look at this like a musical artist, like the next musical artist, but it's a chemical chemical additives.
Right.
You just
Some
find
people have
you
guitars, some people add chemicals,
exactly. You just, but like anything else, you find, who's who are you trying to sell this to? Who's the market for it? And then you make the product, and hopefully everybody sees the potential and starts using it.
Right. Yeah. So we're getting close to wrapping up here. And one of the questions that I ask, or going to ask, if you will, all the people I have discussions with, um, is how many beds have you slept in your life?
Just by myself or with?
It had to have at least you in it.
I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah. So when you think through that question, right, to try to like fathom a number of that, does it bring back any synopsis of memories?
Well, okay, I'll tell you. As soon as you asked that, aside from my joke, the first thing I thought about was uh, my military upbringing, how I had to move around a lot. And then the second, and what's funny about that is, I swore that I was not going to follow in my father's foot. My sister went in the Marine Corps. You were in the Air Force, and so is your wife, and so is our, Aunt Marie, um, and uh, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. I don't like being all over the place, um, and then of course then I become a rock and roll touring musician, so doing the same thing. So the first part you said, I was thinking of my military upbringing, my military childhood, and then the second thing I thought about was, being in hotels and tour buses and couches, and then the third thing I thought about was, um, just even in my personal adult life, of how many different places that I lived. Although I've been in California now for 20 years, um, but even while since I've been here, I did a brief stint in Australia, a brief stint in Austin, Texas. So I'm still moving out and about.
Right.
Um, and then there was another part of that equation, but I'll
No, that's usually
of all the beds that I slept in.
yes. There's the adult area of that, but it's always interesting to one, watch the facial expressions, and then part two, to complete that, right? And so what I mean complete that is, it's not necessarily the answer as far as the numbers. It's really the journey that your mind goes through, right? And so to me, with the people add value experiences, we really like to celebrate journeys, right? And journeys in people's life and collaborations and what they've done, and just being, having that various lifestyle, right? Because there are some people out there that are few and far between, but they've, had their mind and goal set on one thing, and then they've done that and they've been successful in that. Where I really wanted to explore and discover the people that have become successful through trials and tribulations, and have such a various and variety of backgrounds, to get them where they're at today. And so I feel like that question, while some initially think it's like a little inappropriate, it really like starts to build, where have I lived, where have I been, where have I visited, who have I slept in a bed with or next to, or in a room, or shared like a dorm room, and like all these memories come flooding back. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's a cool thing to ask people. And like I said, it's always interesting when people start to be like, wow, and you can see them, they sort of look to the side, and then they just go to those places, right? Like they just start to mentally travel back in time, and just start like, iterating up to where they're at now. So it's a pretty cool thing. But
And that was your special question that you were talking
that was
about,
my
right?
special question.
It's actually very good. It's very interesting. Like I said, as soon as you said it, um, you know, it makes you think, like you said, from beginning to end, right? To curly. Although I'm proud to say that I've been sleeping in the same bed now, at least sleeping this or in the same couple beds for the last, several years. So,
That's good to know.
and I'd like to think, I'd like to keep it that way.
Yep. Well, hey, Billy, I really appreciate your time and coming on People Add Value Experience Pave. I look forward to future conversations, and again, maybe even getting a little bit deeper in some of those topics. But again, I just wanted to, again, show that, and I will be able to drop the links below to your respective businesses, and/or add that to the credits, so that's out there for you.
Well, look, yeah, this was fun, cuz, and we should like interview you sometime because you got
It's
stories
not
about
about me. Not about me. All right, man. Well, we're gonna go ahead and sign off, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening.